There is something most people never notice about their life, not because it's hidden, but because it feels completely normal. You wake up in the morning. Before your brain is fully awake, your hand already reaches for your phone. You check notifications, messages, maybe a few videos. 5 minutes pass, then 10, then 20. Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing feels wrong. You just started the day the way millions of people do. Later, you sit down to work. You open your laptop. Maybe you plan to start something important. But before you begin, you check something quickly. One video, one message, one notification, and suddenly you're somewhere else. Scrolling, clicking, jumping between tabs. An hour disappears. Again, nothing feels catastrophic. You just feel slightly distracted, maybe a little tired, maybe a little unfocused, but not enough to panic. And this is exactly why it's dangerous. Because when something slowly steals your time, your attention, and your focus, but does it quietly, you don't fight it. You adapt to it. Day after day, your brain begins to learn a new pattern. Not effort, not deep focus, not difficult progress, but comfort, easy stimulation, quick rewards, small hits of dopamine. And at first, it doesn't look like a problem. After all, everyone does it. Everyone scrolls. Everyone procrastinates sometimes. Everyone watches videos instead of doing something productive. So your brain assumes something very simple. This must be normal. But here is the part most people miss. Your brain is not just reacting to your choices. Your brain is learning from them. Every time you choose an easy distraction instead of a difficult task, something small happens inside your brain. A connection strengthens. The path toward easy pleasure becomes slightly smoother, and the path toward difficult work becomes slightly harder. You don't notice it immediately, but over time the difference grows. Weeks pass, months pass, and slowly something changes. Starting hard things becomes more difficult. Focusing becomes harder. Your motivation feels weaker, not because you became lazy, but because your brain adapted to a different environment, an environment filled with instant rewards, endless stimulation, and constant entertainment. For most of human history, this kind of environment simply didn't exist. If you were bored, you stayed bored. If you wanted something interesting, you had to work for it. Effort was the price of stimulation, but today the price is almost zero. Your phone delivers more stimulation in 10 minutes than people experienced in entire days just a few decades ago. And your brain never evolved to handle that. So instead of controlling the environment begins controlling you. Quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. Until one day you start asking a frustrating question. Why do I feel like I'm wasting my potential? The answer is not lack of intelligence, not lack of ambition, and not lack of discipline. The answer is something far more powerful. Your brain has slowly become addicted to the easiest dopamine available. And once that happens, your entire behavior starts to change. To understand why easy dopamine is so powerful, you first need to understand one simple fact about the human brain. Your brain does not care about your long-term goals. It cares about immediate rewards. From a biological perspective, this makes perfect sense. For most of human history, the future was uncertain. Humans lived in environments where survival depended on reacting quickly to opportunities and threats. Food might disappear, weather could change, danger could appear at any moment. So the brain evolved to prioritize what it could get right now. Food now was better than food tomorrow. Safety now was better than safety later. Pleasure now meant survival. For thousands of years, this system worked extremely well. It helped humans stay alive in a world where resources were scarce and effort was necessary for almost everything. But the world changed much faster than the brain did. Today, rewards are everywhere. You don't need to hunt for food. You don't need to search for stimulation. You don't even need to move. Everything is available instantly. Your phone alone can give you endless videos, endless social media, endless information, and endless entertainment. And every single piece of that content is designed to trigger the same system inside your brain, the dopamine system. Most people misunderstand dopamine. They think dopamine is simply the chemical of pleasure, but that's not entirely accurate. Dopamine is actually the chemical of anticipation. It spikes when your brain believes a reward might be coming. That's why scrolling feels so addictive. You never know what the next video will be. Maybe it will be funny. Maybe it will be shocking. Maybe it will be interesting or surprising. Your brain keeps anticipating the next reward. Every swipe creates a new possibility. Every scroll resets the anticipation again. It works almost exactly like a slot machine. Most of the time, nothing special happens. But occasionally you see something extremely interesting or entertaining, and that possibility keeps you pulling the lever again and again. Social media platforms understand this mechanism perfectly. They don't need every post to be amazing. They only need some of them to be good enough. That randomness keeps the dopamine system active. And the more you scroll, the more your brain starts to associate your phone with reward. This is where the real problem begins. Your brain naturally starts comparing rewards. Deep work takes effort. Studying takes effort. Building something meaningful takes effort. And the reward is delayed, sometimes by hours, sometimes by weeks, sometimes by years. But your phone offers reward instantly. No effort, no discomfort, no waiting. So your brain begins making a very simple calculation. Why struggle for a reward later when you can get a reward right now? And the more often you choose the easy reward, the stronger this preference becomes. The brain is constantly updating what it believes is worth doing. If scrolling brings frequent dopamine and work brings slow results, your brain begins to favor scrolling. Not because you consciously decided that, but because the reward system is adapting. Over time, difficult tasks begin to feel heavier. Not physically heavier, but mentally heavier. Starting becomes harder. Focusing becomes harder. And staying disciplined becomes harder. Again, not because something is wrong with you, but because your brain has been trained by the environment around you. An environment built almost entirely around instant gratification. And if nothing interrupts that pattern, something predictable begins to happen. Your tolerance for boredom starts to disappear. Tasks that once felt normal now feel exhausting. Reading for an hour feels difficult. Working without checking your phone feels uncomfortable. Even watching a movie without reaching for your phone every few minutes becomes hard. Your brain has adapted to constant stimulation, and when stimulation suddenly disappears, the brain interprets it as a problem. So it begins searching for relief. A quick check, one notification, one short video, just a small break. But that small break resets the entire process. The brain receives another quick dopamine hit, and the difficult task becomes even harder to return to. This is why people often fall into a frustrating cycle. They want to work, they start working. Then they feel the urge to check something. they check their phone, and suddenly 20 minutes disappear. Then they feel frustrated with themselves. They promise to focus next time, but the pattern repeats again the next day. Not because they lack discipline, but because their brain has been trained to expect fast rewards all the time. And the more this pattern repeats, the more powerful it becomes. Over time, the brain begins associating effort with discomfort and comfort with entertainment. That association becomes automatic. You sit down to do something difficult, and your brain instantly suggests something easier, something faster, something more stimulating. Scroll, click, swipe, escape. This is how easy dopamine slowly rewires behavior. Not overnight, but through thousands of tiny decisions, each one reinforcing the same pattern. Until eventually the brain starts believing something dangerous. That effort itself is the problem. And once that belief forms, breaking the cycle becomes extremely difficult. Something dangerous starts to happen when your brain gets used to easy dopamine. Not immediately, not in a way that feels dramatic, but slowly, quietly, your brain begins to change what it considers normal effort. At first, distractions are just interruptions. You're working, then you check your phone. You're studying, then you watch a video. It feels harmless. But every time you interrupt a difficult task with an easy reward, your brain learns something. It learns that effort should always have an escape, that discomfort should always be avoided, and that relief is only one tap away. Over time, this changes how your brain reacts to effort itself. Difficult tasks start feeling heavier, not because they became harder, but because your brain is now comparing them to something extremely stimulating. Think about it this way. Imagine eating extremely sweet candy all day. Then someone gives you a normal apple. The apple suddenly tastes bland, not because the apple changed, but because your brain adapted to a much stronger level of sweetness. The same thing happens with dopamine. When your brain gets constant spikes from fast entertainment, normal activities start to feel dull. Reading feels slow. Studying feels boring. Working on long-term projects feels exhausting. Your brain begins craving stimulation at a much higher level. And when that stimulation isn't there, motivation disappears. This is the moment many people start believing something is wrong with them. They think they became lazy. They think they lost their discipline. They think they simply don't have enough willpower. But the reality is much more mechanical. Your brain has simply adapted to the rewards it receives most often. And if the most frequent rewards in your life are instant and effortless, your brain will naturally prefer them. Over time, something even more frustrating happens. The brain starts resisting effort before you even begin. You sit down to start working, and almost immediately you feel resistance, a strange discomfort, a feeling that you'd rather do literally anything else. Suddenly you remember something you need to check, or you feel the urge to look at your phone, or you decide to quickly watch something before starting. That quick break becomes 20 minutes, then 40, then the entire evening disappears. This is not random behavior, it's a predictable pattern. Your brain is trying to guide you back toward the most reliable source of dopamine it knows. And the longer this pattern continues, the stronger it becomes. Over weeks and months, easy rewards start dominating your attention. Hard tasks start feeling like obstacles instead of opportunities. Even when you know something is important for your future, the motivation to do it feels weak. Because your brain has learned something very simple. Effort feels bad. Quick rewards feel good. So the brain pushes you toward the easiest option available. And this is exactly why so many people feel stuck in their lives. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack ambition, but because their environment trained their brain to expect constant stimulation. The modern world doesn't reward patience, it rewards attention. And every app, every platform, and every notification is competing for that attention, which means your brain is constantly being pulled toward the easiest possible reward. Unless something interrupts that pattern, the result becomes predictable. Your ability to focus weakens, your tolerance for effort shrinks, and slowly, without noticing, your brain stops wanting hard things at all. Once your brain adapts to easy dopamine, a pattern begins to form. At first it looks harmless. You wake up, you check your phone, just for a minute, then you start your day. Later you plan to work on something important, but before starting, you check something quickly. A notification, a message, a video. A few minutes pass, then you finally begin working. But the work feels slow. Your brain is used to stimulation. So after a short period of effort, the urge appears again. Just a quick break, just one more scroll. And slowly this becomes your daily rhythm. Effort, discomfort, escape, relief, again and again. This is what psychologists sometimes call a comfort loop. Your brain constantly moves between two states, effort and escape. The problem is that every escape reinforces the loop, because the moment you leave the difficult task and return to easy stimulation, your brain feels relief, and relief is powerful. Relief tells the brain, this was the correct decision. So the next time effort appears, the brain remembers the shortcut, escape again. Over time, this loop becomes automatic. You don't consciously decide to avoid effort. Your brain simply pushes you toward the fastest reward available. That's why many people feel busy all day, but still feel like nothing meaningful gets done. Their attention is constantly shifting. Small distractions break concentration. Deep focus becomes rare. And without deep focus, progress slows down dramatically. Not because the person isn't capable, but because meaningful progress almost always requires long periods of uninterrupted effort. Writing something important, learning complex skills, building a business, improving your health. All of these require patience and sustained attention. But the comfort loop destroys both. Instead of staying with one task long enough to produce results, the brain keeps jumping to something easier. A message, a video, a quick check. Each one feels small, each one feels harmless. But together they fragment your attention, and fragmented attention produces fragmented progress. Weeks pass, then months. And many people begin to notice something strange. They feel like they are always doing something, always consuming content, always staying busy, but when they look back, very little has actually changed. Their goals remain distant, their plans remain unfinished, their potential remains unused, and the frustrating part is that they don't understand why. From the outside, nothing seems terribly wrong, but internally, the brain has been trained to avoid sustained effort. It expects comfort, it expects stimulation, it expects rewards to arrive quickly. So when real progress demands patience, the brain quietly resists, not aggressively, not dramatically, just enough to push you back into the comfort loop. This is how years can disappear without noticeable progress, not because someone failed once, but because thousands of tiny moments were spent escaping effort instead of completing it. And by the time many people realize what happened, the pattern already feels deeply ingrained. Their brain has learned one powerful lesson. Comfort is easy. Effort is uncomfortable. And when those two options appear, the brain almost always chooses comfort. If easy dopamine can slowly rewire your brain, the obvious question becomes, can you reverse it? The answer is yes, but not in the way most people expect. Most people try to fix the problem with motivation. They promise themselves they will be more disciplined. They promise to focus harder. They promise to stop wasting time. But motivation is unreliable. It disappears the moment something becomes uncomfortable. And the truth is that breaking the dopamine cycle will feel uncomfortable at first, because your brain has adapted to constant stimulation. When you remove that stimulation, the brain reacts. Suddenly everything feels boring. Working feels harder. Silence feels strange. Your brain begins searching for the stimulation it's used to. This is the moment most people quit. They assume something is wrong. They assume they simply don't have enough discipline. But what they're actually experiencing is dopamine withdrawal. Not in a dramatic medical sense, but in a behavioral sense. Their brain is adjusting to a lower level of stimulation. And during that adjustment period, effort feels heavier than usual. But something interesting happens if you stay with the process. Slowly, your brain begins to recalibrate. Activities that once felt boring start feeling normal again. Your tolerance for effort begins to return. Focus becomes easier, and tasks that once felt impossible to start become manageable again. This is how people rebuild their ability to concentrate, not through motivation, but through environment design. The most effective way to break the easy dopamine cycle is surprisingly simple. Make distractions harder to access, and make meaningful work easier to start. For example, leave your phone in another room when you work. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Remove apps that constantly pull your attention. Create blocks of time where entertainment simply isn't available. At first, this feels restrictive, but what you are actually doing is changing the environment your brain learns from. Remember, the brain adapts to the rewards it experiences most often. If easy dopamine is always available, the brain will prefer it. But if effort becomes the most consistent path to reward, the brain begins adapting again. Slowly, gradually, but reliably. And over time, something powerful happens. Effort stops feeling like punishment. Focus stops feeling like struggle. And meaningful progress becomes possible again. This is the part many people never reach, because they underestimate how much their environment shapes their behavior. They keep trying to fight their brain with willpower, instead of redesigning the system around it. But once you understand how the dopamine system works, the strategy becomes clear. Don't rely on motivation. Change the environment that trains your brain, because the same mechanism that trapped you in easy dopamine is the same mechanism that can set you free.